let's continue now. Let's continue now, everybody, with the next panel, for which I would like to introduce my long-term colleague at the Brussels Energy Club, Miss Nadežda Kokotović, who is initially a long-term member of the Brussels Energy Club. She was the chief of cabinet of the CEO of a company called NIS, which is the biggest energy company and conventional energy company in the Balkans, based in Serbia. And then Nadežda became director of the Brussels Energy Club at the end of 2018. So Nadežda, it's fantastic to have you here again in person to lead this next panel. We've got a very good group of panelists online from international financial institutions, speakers from the region, from the investor community. So Nadežda, I hand over to you for this next panel. Welcome.
Thank you, Marat. Thanks a lot. Now we have a panel devoted to donors, technical assistance, and investments for regional level development. And I will start the panel with Stefano Signore, who is the head of unit in DG International Partnerships in the European Commission. Stefano is in charge of climate change and sustainable energy, as well as nuclear safety. But maybe just for colleagues who are not based in Brussels and not know the structure of the European Commission very well, maybe we can say that DG International Partnership is in charge of the European Union global commitments, such as SDGs and Paris Climate Agreement. So what I would like to ask you, Stefano, is we had the EU strategy for Central Asia adopted exactly 4 years ago, but the world has changed so substantially since then. In the strategy, there was several priorities related to this sector that we are talking about today. It's to promote regulatory convergence, so to step up cooperation in renewable energy, improve reciprocity in market access, and so on and so on. Can you tell us what has changed in these 4 years? How do you see the role of the EU today in promoting this particular sector of energy in Central Asian countries?
Yeah. So thank you very much. First of all, thank you for this invitation. Really happy to be able to discuss topics related to energy cooperation in Central Asia. I mean, your question is really very relevant. I mean, a lot of things happened these last 4 years, as we know. First of all, with the COVID and with of course, the global, let's say, economic turbulence related to what COVID brought about. But let's say if we look more closely at the European Union and Central Asia relationships, I think that what I would like to mention in particular are two initiatives. The first one is Global Gateway, which was formally adopted by the Commission towards the end of 2021. And the second one is Repower EU. Global Gateway is important because I think with this initiative, the European Union has reaffirmed its commitment to support deployment of sustainable infrastructure around the world. Probably in past years, before 2020, there was, let's say, less emphasis on supporting hard infrastructure. And Global Gateway reaffirmed the importance to support sustainable infrastructure in areas like energy, transport, digital. But of course, it's not only about hard infrastructure, it's also about the support we want to provide to regulatory environment, capacity building, market integration, so as basically the infrastructure deployment is made in a way which is sustainable, which is economical, and which support broader economic and social objectives. And this is a bit at the heart of the European offer that we do ourselves, but not alone. We do with our European partners, which are, let's say, the member states, the banks like EBRD, EIB, and all together we promote this approach, which is called Team Europe. And I will come to that also relation in particular to Central Asia. The second initiative that I would like to mention is Repower EU, which was adopted by the Commission in May last year as a response to, let's say, the brutal aggression from Russia to Ukraine, in order to basically counter the energy crisis that erupted soon after the war. And this is very relevant again for this conversation, because we will see that the objectives that are stated in Repower EU are very relevant also for our cooperation with Central Asia countries. Because the objective of Repower EU is basically to accelerate deployment of renewable energy, to accelerate progress on energy efficiency, and to diversify the supply of certain fossil fuel sources, in particular gas, in order basically to get rid of the dependency on Russian gas. At the moment, in February 22, the European Union was importing some 40% of the total gas from Russia. And this also is important in terms of what this entails for our cooperation with those countries. Now, when it comes to what we ourselves want to focus on, many of the things which have also been discussed in the previous panel, we know that the region is particularly well endowed with wind and solar, some 5% of the total world capacity of wind and solar. There is also large hydro power capacity, in particular in countries like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Therefore, we want to support deployment of renewables, which are becoming more and more, let's say, basically the cheapest source of energy, but also regional integration. I think regional integration is particularly important for us, is where also we as European have experience. And the more, let's say, those countries do develop an integrated energy market, the more also this will allow to sustain, let's say, energy security, but also to allow increased balancing of different renewable energy sources with more conventional sources. We do this through a Team Europe approach. As I said, we have launched in November last year a Team Europe initiative on water, energy, and climate change, because we know that in particular in this region, the nexus between energy and water is particularly relevant. You cannot really talk about energy without talking about water, and vice versa. Let's say, together with our member state, we want to basically enhance the support we can provide to those countries, in particular through technical assistance. There are a number of technical assistance projects, like, you know, the SECA, Sustainable Energy Connectivity in Central Asia, but more broadly also through a number of other programs that we are going to launch. Of course, this comes in support of a de-risking, financial de-risking toolbox that we are developing with our banks, with our partners, again, like EBRD and DAB. Let me say that in this region, as of 2010, through a number of facility investment, we have mobilized close to 700 million in support of energy cooperation through our, let's say, partner financial institution, as I said, in particular, EBRD. So let me stop here, because I want to abuse of the time, but definitely happy to come back to some of those elements later on.
Thank you. Thank you for this overview, because with this overview, you gave us a guideline, actually, how to listen to presentations from our 3 representatives of banks today, because this is actually the framework in which they operate their programs. In this respect, we heard from almost all speakers today about hydrogen. We also heard this morning from the ambassador that Kazakhstan has signed a partnership or something like that with the European Union on hydrogen, critical raw materials, and batteries. Everyone is talking about the SVEVIND project. Stefano, what is your comment on that?
Well, let me first say that from what we heard, we see that there is a lot of potential. There is also capital available, and we have a number of development banks like EIB, EBRD, KfW that are ready to help. So we need to make it sure that this can happen at scale. And for me, if you want, the green hydrogen topic is not a standing alone one. It's really deeply connected to this conversation about renewable energy, because when we write renewable hydrogen, we have to read renewable energy. In essence, is about deploying at scale more solar, more wind. It's not something else. You know, I mean, you reach, let's say, the molecule by adding a massive amount of solar and wind. Therefore, we need to keep this in mind. Then when you have added this massive amount of solar and wind, the next question mark, okay, what do I do with it? First question mark, is there anything that is needed for the domestic market? It is a relevant question mark. Second question mark, do I dispatch the electrons or the molecule? And then, of course, there is also quite relevant question mark. Would it make sense to have a cable, or let's say to dispatch the molecule through other means? What we know is that for sure, Kazakhstan is a country that has a very big potential to produce green hydrogen at scale. Not differently from other countries, there is the issue of the logistic, of the infrastructure. When you have to think about exporting big quantities of green hydrogen, of course, the question about infrastructure is key. And on that, I think there are still a number of issues that we need to look at, that, you know, studies that need to be carried out. There is additional work to do. But from the point of view of the long-term perspective, I think that it is unquestionable that Kazakhstan is one of the countries, third countries, that has the biggest potential to become a green hydrogen producer and exporter.
Would you like to comment on something else that the European banks and private funds told today?
Yes, I think that, look, there were many elements which were interesting. And I think in particular, the one on energy efficiency was very interesting because, of course, renewable is good, but you still have to make, let's say, good use of the energy you produce. And the cheaper electron is the one that you don't use. Therefore, I think that in this region, there is a lot to do on energy efficiency. By the way, this is an area where we have invested heavily over the years because we have, through the EIB, through EBRD, or other institution, supported a number of projects on energy efficiency. And of course, the building sector is very difficult. We see also in Europe that is one of the sectors that is more difficult and sensitive to decarbonize. I'm not sure we can just do with grants.
Sensitive
socially, yes, from a social point of view, because there is expenditure that, let's say, households have to encounter. But I think that is not only through public subsidies that you can achieve the goal. If you pay the electricity 1 cent per kilowatt, you will never make it, because to some extent, even though, of course, you need to protect those social layers that are more vulnerable, so of course, you know, let's say the poorest one, with ways where basically the public side put the money the end in the pockets. But if you don't address the tariff issue, it will be impossible, in my view, to work sustainably in energy efficiency.
But that was my also last question to you. Do you think that the cheap electricity in the region is maybe the biggest obstacle, in addition to regulatory stability and so on? But do you think
I think that is work ongoing. I think that in a number of countries, we see that there is serious work ongoing on tariffs. Let's also pay tribute to the work that is ongoing for industrial actors, but not only. This work has to continue. If we want to tap into the opportunities that the speakers were mentioning in terms of mobilizing capital, this work has to continue in order to bring the tariff as much as possible, the average tariff as much as possible to cost-reflective ones. And then, of course, there is the social issue, which, I mean, has to be tackled. But definitely the average tariff, especially in certain countries, have to be reviewed, so as, let's say, those projects can go to scale and can, let's say, target a wider portion of the population.
Thank you.